What is up, my YouTube family? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then it's just welcome to my channel and not welcome back. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button because you will not be disappointed unless, of course, your taste level is not up to par. Chill. Going into the new year, I'm just gonna let y'all be. I tried to help y'all all 2024. I'm done. If you ain't fixed by now, you can't be. So everyone else, hi. Hello, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I hope y'all enjoyed your holiday week. I enjoyed mine. I had some good food, y'all. Whew. Mama's still full, okay? And I have completely fallen off the wagon as far as keeping with the routine. Child, I ain't had a routine in like 13 days. That's crazy. I gotta get back on it. Tomorrow, not today. I just washed my face thoroughly in the shower, so I'm gonna start with my skincare routine while I sip this protein coffee, and we gonna get into this case. Cause when I tell you it's a hot mess, and this all happened in Grovetown, Georgia. I don't know how far it is from Atlanta or where it's at. You know, I haven't been into the geography of the thing since for 20 years, okay? That was roughly ninth grade. So on the morning of March 25th, 2009, roughly around 9 a.m., a 911 call comes into the Columbia County Sheriff's Office, and it's from a handyman who has been hired to do a job. And he arrives to said residence to find the owner of the home, Kay Parsons, bludgeoned to death in her garage. The back door had been broken in and there's also blood everywhere. They dispatched both officers as well as an ambulance to come out just in case she is still alive. Now, next to where Kay is laying in the garage, there is a claw hammer. I hate when I do these and a claw hammer is used as a weapon because that's just so violent. There's also a baseball bat lying next to her. Both had very obviously been used. And miraculously, Kay still has a very faint heartbeat. So they rush her to the hospital, get her plugged up on life support, and the medical team just does their best to make sure she pulls through. They also make contact with David Parsons, Kay's husband, who is currently out of town, to let him know what's going on. David drops everything to rush to be by his wife's side. And from there, the detectives get to doing their, investigation. Now, while talking to the neighbors, they find out that the house directly next door has also been burglarized, but luckily for this particular family, nobody was at home. And while questioning one of the neighbors in particular, Sergeant Edmonds becomes a little bit suspicious of him and asks him to show him the bottom, like the sole of his tennis shoe. And he notices a chunk of glass embedded in the sole. Now, we'll come back to that in just a second. Now, while taking a close look at this house next door, which belongs to Tony and Becky Sears, detectives find a smudge of blood on their door, which tells them that this has been the work of the same person, and they had gone to the Parsons house first and then the Sears home. Which was really weird because why would you go and off somebody in one house and then literally go burglarize the very next door neighbor? Like, one would think that, child, once you did the deed, you would set off on foot or in your getaway car and drive as far away as possible. This just did not make sense to the detectives, and it don't make sense to me either. They also gathered from the neighbors that these two families are very close. The Parsons and the Sears oftentimes hang out. They go bowling together. The adults play tennis together, and their children, who are relatively close in age, play on the same baseball team. And Becky actually refers to Kay as her very best friend because they live similar lives, being, wives, mothers, and live right next door to each other. They spent a lot of time together. So when Becky finds out all of the things that have transpired, she's not really concerned about her house being broken into. She rushes to be by Kay's side at the hospital, and so has Kay's husband, David. Now, sadly, Kay is declared brain dead, and when the doctors explain her state to David, he makes the decision to go ahead and just pull the plug and remove her from life support. They weren't really confident in her making a recovery at all. Meanwhile, detectives bring in the handyman to ask him a few more questions. He tells them he first pulled up to the house at about 8:45 a.m. and he noticed the neighbor, Michael, sitting on this boulder that sits across the street from both houses, kind of in between. And this is something that he just remembered. Like, you know how the moment something seems like it has significance, but you don't really know why, and it doesn't really sway you one way or the other? It's just something that he noticed. And remember when I told you that the detectives had spoken to someone who had glass embedded in the sole of their tennis shoe? Well, that was Michael. And Michael is Becky's son. And this glass that was in the bottom of his shoe matched perfectly to the broken glass at Kay Parsons' home. There was no broken glass at his own house. And Michael also happens to have a criminal history that includes burglary. So of course, at this point, they're now looking at Michael as a person of interest. Now, a day and a half into their investigation, a frantic 911 call comes in, this time from Becky, who's been very on edge this last day and a half. And in this 911 call, she is very frantic. She has been shot in the leg by a man that she said just randomly walked out of the woods behind her job. She was locking up at this Healing Hands physical therapy center where she works when the man ambushed her for money. She gave him what she had, and he told her next time he was going to aim for the head. Okay. Hearing all of this, officers believe that this too is the work of Michael, her eldest and most troubled son. She had recently threatened to kick him out of the house. They didn't have the best relationship. She was always writing him, always complaining about whatever he was doing. He had an addiction issue, all of the things that came with that as well. And officers think that he is just maybe retaliating against his mother, or maybe it attacked Kay to try to get some fast cash, and he just out in the streets down bad doing whatever it takes, right? So they go collect Michael up off the streets before he can hurt anyone else. When they get to questioning him, halfway accusing him, he denies having any involvement in or knowledge of any of the things that have transpired, which they do not believe him at all. But they don't have any physical evidence aside from that piece of glass that was in the bottom of his sneaker to pin him on anything, so they can only question him and let him go. And the next day, now just 2 whole days into this investigation, the detectives are completely thrown for a loop, honey, and their entire case is turned on its head because they receive a phone call letting them know that an inmate wants to speak with them. And this is a man by the name of Jerry Jacobs, who is Becky's brother. Jeremy insists that he knows exactly who is responsible for the break-in at his sister's house, her being popped in the leg, and what has tragically happened to Kay Parsons. And he says it has nothing to do with his nephew Michael, despite how it may look, and everything to do with his mama, Becky. He also states that if Becky did have the help of a son, it wasn't Michael. It would have been her other son, Christopher. Now, child, this is a lot, okay? It's a lot going on with this phone call. So they bring Jerry down for an interview, and Jerry tells them that nothing is as it appears on the surface between these two families. Becky is not good friends with that lady. For real. She has in fact been sleeping with that lady's husband and really did not care for Kay all that much. Jerry also tells them that his sister Becky had recently met up with him. She had randomly called him, wanted to talk to him about something very important, but in person. They met at a parking lot and Becky started talking. She immediately became very emotional. She was crying and she confessed to her brother Jerry about she and David's affair, and she is justifying it by telling him all of these things that David does for her that her own husband Tony does not, how David is so emotionally in tune with her, understanding, he listens to her, and they're meant to be. It's given soulmate, you know? She tells Jerry that the two of them love each other and would like to be with one another. It is just one thing in the way, and that is Kay. She then very tearfully asks her brother if he knows anyone or if there is a way that Kay could be killed and it is made to look like an accident. Now, to be crying and saying all of these things is real crazy. But that is what Becky is doing down in this parking lot to her brother Jerry. Now, according to Jerry, he had tried to reason with her. He told her, you know, Becky, sometimes we get upset with people and we have these kind of thoughts about them. We think we want bad things like this to happen to them, but it's just like our emotions and we don't really mean it. But to that, Becky says, no, I mean it. You might not mean it when you say it, but I mean it. She doubles down on her desire. She tells Jerry, I am sure I want Kay dead, and asks him, can we do this? And he tells her, no, we cannot. And that was the end of their conversation. And now that this has happened to Kay, he really feels in his soul, or he knows that his sister was behind it. And in the interview, he seemed really, really torn about coming forward and, you know, pointing his sister out, but he felt in his heart that it was the right thing to do and he knew he had to. When they get to thinking about it, they're like, wait a minute, this is kind of adding up. You know, the math is math. And it did conveniently happen while her alleged lover was out of town. And so now they're looking at Mr. Parsons as well. Like, was this a group project? Like, was this a group effort? Were you in on the things? She and David, meaning Kay, have been high school sweethearts and they have been together ever since. Was he now bored with Kay and ready to trade in his lifetime lover for his, little side piece? They don't know, but it's looking like that is a possibility. Jerry also tells detectives that if she did involve her son, it would not have been Michael. It would have been her younger son, Christopher. And that she and Christopher are very close, but like strangely close. They also find out, child, she was just a son-making machine. She had 3 other younger sons with her current husband, Tony. So in all, she got 5, but Christopher is her clear favorite amongst them. The family often jokes with him, calling him, mama's boy because of their closeness. But according to Jerry, it went way beyond like your typical average mama's boy dynamic. She dotes on him a lot. She's always speaking highly of him to anybody who would listen. She funds his lifestyle. She has purchased his home, his car. She spoils him by buying him expensive gifts like on the regular. No birthday, not for Hanukkah or Christmas, just on a regular average Tuesday in July. And he also has a nasty little habit himself, which she fully funds. She fuels it by giving him money for drugs, or she'll get the drugs for him herself and give them to him. Y'all, whatever it is that Christopher wants in life, Becky goes far and beyond to make sure that he gets it. Just as long as whatever she asks of him, he does for her. Now, on the same day that they speak with Jerry, they bring in David Parsons, Kay's husband, for an interview. And they don't play any games with him. They let him know right away they have found out about his little affair with his next door neighbor. And child, when they confront him with it, he just drops his head like he is caught. He tells them, the summer of last year, he did embark on an affair with his next door neighbor, Becky, and lays it all out how it happened. Becky is something else. It was after a tennis game that the couples have played together, where Becky had pulled him to the side and said that the reason she sucks so bad in tennis is because he distracts her all the time with his handsome good looks. And she tells David that she can barely focus out there with him looking that good on the tennis court. She can't hit the balls out there because she's focusing on the wrong one. Now, initially, he didn't really take the bait. He was kind of laughing the things off. But when she did not let up with the flirting, he eventually came around to flirting himself once he felt safe and secure that this was not a setup. And from there, baby, a lot of flirting was going on right under the noses of both of their partners. The flirting progresses into them having these secret side conversations. They would text each other. They would call each other when they could. The two of them would make plans to double date with their partners just to give them the opportunity to like hang out with one another. But eventually they got real bold and started making plans to sneak and hang out one-on-one. And then they started scheduling these sexcapades that they'd have, of course, behind their partners' backs, and take turns hunching in each other's houses, back and forth, being at whichever house, was convenient. Over time, Becky begins to develop feelings for David. She is falling in love, baby. And she is not so impressed by her husband, Tony. It says she wants gays. And then it started to give obsession on Becky's part. She became really crazy about David, and it was her hope that they both could leave their respective partners and be together. She even confessed to her husband about the affair and told him, baby, basically, honey, this between me and you is over, okay? My heart is next door with David. And when she tells David that she has, come clean to her husband and it was his turn to come clean to his wife, he was pissed to find out that she had told anyone about their affair. And he was like, girl, we just basically like sneaking and freaking. This was not supposed to go anywhere. I'm not trying to leave my wife. And they have this conversation on February 18th, just about a month prior to Kay's death. David said he told her then that he wanted to end the affair because, child, she didn't get her wires crossed. She got some mixed signals from somewhere. And to just really clear it up for her, they're going to sever the affair. He said that he gave her back her burner phone that she had purchased for him so that they could talk. And after giving her the phone back, he was out of there, leaving Becky heartbroken. And according to him, after the affair was ended that day, he had cut her off and the two had not spoken since that day. But the thing about them phone records, girl, they gonna tell a different story if you not telling the truth, you know? So detectives had already pulled his phone records and Becky's phone records, okay? And according to the phone records, the two of them had not stopped communication at all. Like, there is no gap in their communication whatsoever. In fact, he and Becky had talked extensively. They'd had a nice long conversation the night that Kay was killed. So they bring this up in real time, and in that moment, like instantly, he begins to backpedal. And he's like, yeah, we did talk that night. We did have a long conversation. The detectives are like, oh yeah, what about? And this man goes, about nothing in particular. Like, sir, it was something. They press him a little bit more about the nature of this phone conversation and let him know they are not about to play these little reindeer games with him. And he finally lets them know what it was. Child, Becky had called him up while he was out of town on business for a little piece of phone sex. Calling up a man to have phone sex with him while you're actively having his wife killed is nasty. I told y'all Becky was something else. That is nasty behavior to the 10th power. And with that, they let him know that things are not looking too good for him. He's not looking all that innocent, and they're asking if he had anything to do with what happened to his wife, and he insists that he did not. That, yeah, you know, he had been sleeping with her best friend, next door neighbor, tennis partner, you know. But that's where he drew the line, being trifling. He said that he did not hurt his wife. He would not have hurt his wife. He gives them permission to search any and everything that they want to search because he is that confident that they won't find anything supporting their theory that he has. He also became emotional. He said that he never thought his wife would be in danger and that Becky would do something like this. And even after it happened, he had not suspected that she had anything to do with it because he just did not think that Becky had something like this in her. And then he brings up he and Kay's son and he really becomes emotional. He's like, he would have never taken his son's mother from him, saying he never ever would inflict a pain like that on his child, like knowingly. The detectives that he's speaking with, they felt like he was genuinely disturbed by the idea of his lover Becky having done this, especially for his love, because he is just finding out or just thinking of her having something to do with it right here in this conversation. They also see his emotion behind, you know, him talking about his son and not willingly doing something like that, like not hurting his son like that, as genuine. They believed him to be telling the truth, and so they actually clear him as a suspect after speaking with him. Child, let him go on home to be a single father. But before he leaves, they ask him one last question. Who all knew about this affair? And he says Becky, of course, she was in it. Tony, her husband, because she had confessed to him, and Christopher, her favorite son. Later the same day, the mother-son duo is brought into the station for questioning, and the two of them are immediately split up, put into two different interrogation rooms. By this point, her son Michael, who had the glass in his shoe, they still looked into him, but he provided an alibi that was rock solid, so he was able to be cleared as well. Now, in Christopher's interrogation room, he is refusing to say much. Instead, he is kind of trying to gaslight the detectives. He is saying or mentioning how much he's been through over the last couple days. He has lost a family friend. Now his mother has been shot, and here they are bringing him in for questioning, low-key accusing him of having something to do with it. He tells them that he is not speaking without a lawyer present, and his interview is basically over at that point. And during his interview, he was very smug and very rude. I don't know why when I heard he was a mama's boy like that, I thought he was gonna be so sweet and demure and nice, meek and mild-mannered. He wasn't that at all. I thought that was gonna bring him in there hugging on a teddy bear. Child, and meanwhile, over in his mother's interrogation room, they're having a completely different experience with Miss Becky. She is over there saying a lot, unlike her son. And according to Miss Becky, her son, Christopher, killed Kay, and he did so all on his own accord. She said that he had told her that he was just gonna, quote, do what he had to do and was gonna do, in his mind, whatever needed to be done to make her happy. Becky then tells detectives that she never thought that he would do anything like this, never thought that her son would actually hurt Kay or anyone else for that matter, because he's just so sweet. That's actually the reason why he would do anything to make her happy, because he's just such a sweet son. She claims to be very shocked by his actions. She becomes super emotional, and then she says that her fault in all of this is letting Christopher believe that it was okay to do whatever to make her happy. And said that she never actually wanted Kay hurt, but she did make him believe that she did, and that Kay being out of the picture would just make her life so much better. Like, Kay was just standing in the way of her happiness. She begins to sob as she tells detectives that her son thought he was just helping his mama, and admits that prior to this happening, he had told her that he was going to eliminate her competition and move this obstacle out of the way of her being happy. But she had told him absolutely not, and he should not do it. And on that very day that it happened, she had gone over to Christopher's house really early in the morning to pick him up. She brought him back to her own house, and he was hanging out in their spare bedroom upstairs. A little while later, she had left the house with all of her other sons, leaving Christopher in the house alone. And she said before she left, she had told Christopher to just stay inside the house till she got back. Don't go anywhere. Don't get into trouble. And to that, he had told her he was going to do what he has to do. And she said she told him at that point, like, you don't have to do anything. And at the point that she pulled off with her other sons, she said that Christopher was standing in her backyard. Now, there was a board broken down that separated the two houses in the backyard, which is how Christopher then made his way onto the Parsons property. He broke in, attacked Kay in the garage, threw things around the home to make it look like a burglary had happened, then went back into his own mother's house, traveling through the backyard the same way he came. And him opening the back door is how the blood got smeared on the door handle of their house. He then staged a burglary there as well and changed clothes that had been laid out for him. He then grabbed a backpack that was also packed for him and set off on foot. He walks a little bit down the road where he stops for a second, pulls out his phone, calls his mom. Becky pulls up, picks him up, and she said that when she picked him up, she recalls that he did not have any blood on like his clothing, but he did have smeared blood on his face. So then she asked him, like, what did you do? And he didn't say anything. He just sat there quiet. So at that point, she begins to beg. She's like, Christopher, please tell me you did not hurt Kay. Please tell me that she is okay. And then he finally says, quote, I beat the shit out of her. Now, detectives are listening to her, and they're having to eat the fish and throw away the bones, because they know there are bits and pieces of the truth like scattered throughout her version of events, but a lot of it is tweaked to make herself look innocent, like she wasn't involved in any of the things. Like she didn't lay out them clothes or pack that backpack or send her son in. Like, yeah, he might do anything for you, but not on his own free will, like you said. He was asked and he obliged. Both of them are charged with Kay's murder and placed under arrest immediately. And they are represented by some pretty good lawyers. And their main attorney's brother is the lawyer for the prosecution. So these two brothers are battling out this case, which is crazy, kinda. Both Becky and Christopher are facing the death penalty. And when she enters the courtroom and sees her son for the first time since the day that they have been arrested, she blows him a kiss and tells him that she loves him. The whole little court proceeding, she just could not keep her head straight. She just kept turning back to look at her son. Like, girl, you just threw him under the bus. Leave him alone. This why David didn't want you, baby. It's giving crazy. Okay. After court, she writes him 2 letters. And one, she says, let me read a little piece of this letter she wrote him. Just one of them. Hey, baby, how are you doing? Not too good, I'm sure. I am so sorry that you have been dragged into this mess. I don't even know how it happened. I guess you should have gone to your job that day instead of coming to my office. I wouldn't blame you if you hated me. I know I let you down. Let all of you down. I miss you and the baby so much. It is driving me crazy. I hope you know how much I love you. And then really get a little sticky. I can't read the rest. But it's all some BS if you ask me. Now, when it came to Christopher being tried, they had no solid evidence against him. No DNA, no nothing. Just his own mother's statement pointing the finger at him. And y'all, Becky is not through with her son yet. I told y'all Becky is something else. A few days before the first trial date, Becky and her lawyer make contact with the other side because she has a bargaining chip. She tells them that she knows exactly where the bloody clothes are, the ones that he had worn that morning, and that they are inside of a box inside of her mother's attic, and it still has Christopher's DNA on it, which would provide them some solid evidence that she's sure they could make use of. When they retrieve the clothes, test the DNA, and it comes back as a positive match to Christopher, he changes his plea from not guilty to guilty. And Miss Becky, mama didn't just give up that information for free just out of the goodness of her heart. Ain't no goodness in her heart. She gave it up in exchange for the death penalty being taken off the table for her. Not for her and her son, but for herself. She too enters a guilty plea as well, and the mother-son duo are both sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole ever. So he didn't get the DP either. Y'all, just a hot mess and a half. I told y'all this case was messy. That pretty much wraps up this case. I appreciate you guys so much for spending your time with me. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you to everybody who watched last Thursday's video, the animated Beyond Belief. I'm so excited that the second one is coming. Oh, child, my hand itchy. That mean I'm about to get some money. It is a new moon. Give me some money, baby. The next one will be this Thursday, and I'm super excited about it. Yeah, as always, I appreciate you for spending your time with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace. And he arrives to said he arrives to said residence. I said it again, like what in the world? And he arrives to said residence, and miraculously, Kay still has a very faint heartbeat. So they rush her to the hospital. Does live at the home with her. Okay. Now who is girl? And so has Kay's husband, David. Now, sadly, Kay is declared brain dead, and not the officers, girl, they don't know nothing about being brain dead probably. And when the doctors funds his lifestyle, she has purchased his tongue. Girl, I can't say purchased. And this conversation between the two of them happens on September. What's that? What's September, y'all? When is that? Is it the fall? Is it the spring? And this conversation between them is happening on September. What is September? And said conversation is happening on September. Maybe I can't say it and do the blush at the same time, so maybe I should just focus on that and try after. Maybe it's like the hand movement in my tongue. You can't just... Now, later the same day, and as soon as he realized they suspected, both, I was gonna call her Becky. She too changes her play.